Thank you for being here. This video and probably every video that I make is basically just a documentation of my experiences and reflections. So as things are starting to change in my life, I just feel a deep desire to be even more present with what is current and like what my current situation is and how I'm living my life and what's happening and everything. And at this point in my life, I feel like I've just had so many experiences of change that I can just surrender and accept that change truly is the only constant. So I now do my best to welcome and embrace change. And with embracing change, I think comes a lot of different emotions and reflections. I feel like I can just see and understand the impermanence of everything, and I just know that nothing will last forever in this life. Not your pain, and not even your happiness, not your current state of being, your living situation, your relationships. All of these things are just constantly going to be changing, and we're constantly going to be growing, and there's really nothing we can do about it except for embracing it, just accept it and face it as it's happening to us. With that being said, this change has been a long time coming. We are moving out of our humble little abode, our room, and we are upgrading to a bigger room. We'll still be in the same house, but the housemate upstairs recently moved out, so we're moving into the bigger room, and it also has its own bathroom, so it's a big upgrade, and honestly it's going to be such a game changer to not have to share a bathroom. So we're very excited and relieved, and it's all happening like today and tomorrow actually. And now as I sit in this room and look around, and I've been doing this since we knew that we were going to be moving, I just think about how things will never really be the same. And even like the smallest things, like where we eat our dinner, which is right here on this desk, where we do our homework, where everything is in the room, closet, it's just a whole new room. And although I've been patiently, very patiently waiting for this moment and anticipating it and manifesting it and hoping for it to happen, it's just crazy that it's actually here and it's now happening. As I've been reflecting and mentally preparing to move these past few weeks, I look around and I kind of just think about like, how did we fit in here, or how are we fitting in here, because it's a pretty small space, about like 10 feet by 13 feet. And where I'm filming right now, this is just like our desk space area. This is like half of the room, but if I were to turn the camera around, it would literally just be the bed. There's one closet that we share. We have our bed here, and then the desk space, and then there's like a little bit of walking space. There's like a space between the bed and the desk where I can roll out my yoga mat and do yoga. And that's pretty much our room. And since we live in a shared housing situation, we spend pretty much all of our time at home in this room. Unless we're cooking, of course, or using the bathroom, we're pretty much in this room. So I just wanted to share some reflections about creating physical space and also emotional space in a shared area, because it's really a lot to be sharing your physical space with someone, and it does impact your emotional space and your mental space and everything. The first thing I want to talk about is creating physical space. And in order to create physical space, we have to be very mindful of each other. For example, just because I might be expected to have more things and more belongings, more clothes or whatnot, I still make sure to give an equal amount of space for my partner and all of his belongings. So the closet is shared equally, and honestly, I've kind of always shared a closet because I grew up with siblings and always sharing a room. So this wasn't like too hard for me, I think, but sharing a closet has definitely helped me to simplify even more, to just be more mindful of my own belongings too, and like what I have and what I buy, and do I have actual space for it. So I think just making sure that we both have enough space to exist and just have all of our things is very important, and not feeling like we need to get rid of our own things, but just finding ways to simplify or reorganize. And also in terms of physical space, we both have like slightly different styles in terms of like the way that we want to decorate or design, or just the way that we want things in general. So sharing this space specifically has really taught us about compromise and also reasoning. Since we moved into this space, we've moved the room around a bit, and throughout all of those times of transition and like whenever we would be moving things around, we would just go back and forth and have conversations about what we wanted for the space and why we wanted it. So being able to say what you want, but also explain why you want it, and then reasoning with what each other's desires and needs are for that. And you have to make sure that you're actually really considering what your partner or the other person is saying, and then find ways to meet in the middle. One example is I wanted like our blanket duvet shade cover. We used to just have a blanket on the bed, and that's what Sydney was happy with. So I explained to him that I wanted it because it was like a cozy look and a nice feel, and it made the room look a little bit more put together instead of just a bed with a blanket and pillows. And then eventually we found and we picked one that we both agreed on. And something that's really big for Sydney is that he wants the room to be pretty minimal and clean. But I wanted our space to have more character and just little things that make the room feel alive and show like our personalities in the room. So to compromise, one thing that we do is we just make sure that everything that we have has a place and it looks clean. It doesn't necessarily have to be clean and like have nothing out, but if it's going to be left out, it's going to be left out because it belongs there and not just because it's messy. So I guess an example would be like this little bookcase space over here. I have all of these books out, and I say like, oh, I like seeing all of the books and having all of the books out. As long as it has a place and it looks clean and put together, then it can be left out. So that's kind of where we compromise on that. And I think that's just a really big, important thing to consider, is making sure that everything has a place, because it helps us to keep things clean, and it also helps us to be considerate of each other's belongings. So if either of us leaves something out, we know exactly where to put it, and this prevents us arguing about things being messy or not knowing where things are and being mad about that. So if I leave my bag out and Sydney wants to clean, I'll know that he put it in the space where my bag goes in the closet, and it won't have to be like, oh, where did you put this? Like, why do you always have to be moving my things around or something? So it's a preventative argument method too. And I think that's also really helpful if you have a small space in general, because it's easy for a small space to feel cluttered or messy. So having a space for everything, just make sure that you know what the standards of clean are in the room, and you can both agree on that. So let's start with the closet. Opening this thing is tricky, so you have to use your toe, slide it open, and it may look pretty messy, but it's a very organized mess. And I know that because if I'm looking for something, I know exactly where to go to find it. And then for this side is where we keep our hamper, and our shoes go under there, and then Kenzo's food is right here, and my yoga mat, backpacks, Kenzo's things. We hang our keys here, and then clothes, backpack, and then more storage things up here, and this is like our camping gear and Hypervolt, and that's pretty much it on this side. And moving on to creating emotional space, I think something that's really important for me, at least, is just to have times when we're both not at home. Like, as much as I love spending time together and being together, even though this is both of our rooms, I think we just need it to be like our own room sometimes too. Like, for example, right now Sydney is at work, so I get to just have this space to myself, and that helps me to just feel like I belong in here, not just because we're together, but because this is also my space to be comfortable and feel safe and feel at home. And then our school schedules are different, so whenever I'm out at school, Sydney has his online classes here, so he's able to just have the room to himself, have the space that he needs to do his online classes and whatever he needs to do during that time too. We can't both be at home together all of the time, and I think that's actually really healthy, because we need to have our own lives and our own experiences, and then when we come together it just creates something even more beautiful. And then for emotional space, I think it's also important that we have routines for things. Our evening routines are pretty established. Once we're both done with school or work or something, we go to the gym together, then we come home and we know that we need to make our protein smoothies and then walk Kenzo and then make dinner, clean, eat, shower, get ready for bed. So we kind of know that all of those things need to happen, or we're just simultaneously working on all of these things after we get home. Just another smaller routine or agreement, you could say, is just making sure that we wear our house slippers outside, and if we're not wearing our house slippers, then we make sure to clean our feet before we walk in so that we don't like dirty up the room. And yeah, we're just being respectful of our space and our needs in keeping this space clean. So although we did live together in another apartment back in 2019 to around 2020 for about a year, it was during COVID, and I feel like we didn't even really get to process that we were living together. It was kind of like we had to move out of the space we were in so we found a new space, and then it all just like happened. The first apartment that we lived in together was a lot bigger, so we didn't really have to think about all of these things. It wasn't really like a matter of so much compromising, and since it was like our first space together and we were still pretty young, we didn't know how we wanted things to be, but now that we have more understanding of what we both want and need in a space, these are just really important things for us to consider. And I think in general that like as a couple, we just have to remember that we are our own individual people. Like he's not just my partner, he's an individual person, and he has his own needs, desires, and experiences that happen that I can't fully understand sometimes, and that's okay. And if we're sharing a space, we just need to make sure to be considerate of each other as individuals instead of just having expectations for how you want things to be. Anyways, we're moving tomorrow, and I just really like to document the present state of things. So whether that's journaling, I'll just ask myself like, where am I at right now, like physically, mentally, emotionally, like what is my living situation like? What is my school situation like? Who are my close friends? What's my relationships in my life like? What am I eating? All of those things. It's just so interesting to think about how things are constantly changing. And this is probably, and kind of hopefully, the smallest space that we'll live in. And I know that things will only continue to grow. So I just want to know that we can exist in this kind of space together. And I just want to remember how we did it, what it looked like, and all these little details. And I think I also just kind of want to remember that it's possible to be in this kind of space together, like through compromise, understanding, reasoning, communication, and having a healthy relationship. I feel like we can just kind of do anything together. This room is kind of proof of that in a way too. So yeah, that's all for this video. Really just another reflection and documentation of my truth and my experiences.